I grew up in a household of magic. There's a story at our place. I wasn't delivered by the stork. I was pulled out of the hat. My dad was a magician, and his name is Julie Eng. He was born and raised in Victoria, BC, and he first was encountering magic when he was about 8 years old. A barber had shown him a coin trick, but from then on, he was hooked. And when my sister and I were old enough to walk, we were incorporated in the show too. So it was a family affair. We had, mom and dad in these Chinese costumes and their daughters in Chinese costumes, and all the magic was themed with Chinese iconography. So you can imagine the shock and surprise when my father gets called aside and accused of inappropriate cultural appropriation. We didn't call it that back then. I was about 10 years old and we were performing out of town in Vancouver. It was for a Chinese festival of some sort. My parents were often called to perform at these kinds of events. And as we're packing up, my parents get called into this meeting by members of the Cultural Association for the Chinese Community. It turns out some of the members of the association took issue with not so much the show itself, but rather with my father's costume, specifically his hat. He wore a black decorative Chinese robe, but he capped it with a hat, much like the one Cheng Ling Su wears in the old posters. Well, it turns out the hat resembles those worn by the military officers from the Qing dynasty. So members of the association felt that this was offensive because it would be like my dad glorifying or championing the military might versus the everyman movement, which would have been better symbolized by wearing a skull cap that was more informal and humble. So my dad's like, I'm not interested in making any political statements. I'm trying to bring a dignified Chinese character to this stage, the way that the old masters did. I know that it really greatly upset my father, and he acquiesced. He started wearing the black satin skull cap for the rest of his performing career, and just like that, he let it go. I'm very proud of my Chinese heritage, but I'm also a Canadian, and I think that that's an important way to look at how I view things now. And I don't believe that it serves any magicians to impersonate a Chinese character anymore. I think those days have definitely ended, and I think it's time to also look at who are we as we're performing. It's true, we make first impressions the moment we step out on stage. So how are you going to communicate who you are to a particular audience?